7:17. There's an argument, isn't there? There's only one thing, really, we should be talking about day in, day out, and that's the future of the planet that we all call home. Today, world leaders meet in Glasgow to kick off the world's most crucial climate change conference so far. It's number 26. They've met 25 times previously, and this time it's critical. 1 minute to midnight, as the Prime Minister has said, and they've got a big task ahead of them. How might the climate, though, and changing weather patterns affect you? Here in Oxfordshire, scientists in our county are now able to model weather forecasts, this is amazing, for decades ahead. Are you a little bit sceptical about this? Have a listen to our political reporter Claire Starr. She's just taking a look at what we might be facing in the future.
Wildfires, flash flooding, cyclones, extreme weather events across the globe. But with our climate changing, will we have to deal with worsening weather nearer to home?
Because the house floods, and we've had about 3 or 4 inches of water throughout the house, we have to put flood barriers on. But you still have to be here to make sure that the water doesn't get into the house.
Sue Hill has spent thousands of pounds to protect her home in Charlegrove from flooding.
It makes you very anxious, very emotional. It's very anxiety producing, very, very stressful.
The village of Charlegrove was one of many areas across the Thames Valley affected by severe flooding in 2008 and 2014. It's heavy rain heading into brooks and streams like this one that flows through the centre of Charlegrove that have contributed to the flooding events we've seen here over the years. But ahead of the climate conference in Glasgow, the Environment Agency warned that we must adapt to climate challenges rather than wait for the consequences of not taking any action. Dr. Chris Huntingford is a climate researcher at the Centre for Ecology and Hydrology in Wallingford. As part of his work, he looks at forecasts for our climate here over the next few decades.
We're expecting drier summers, but the storms that do occur are more intense, so we may not get necessarily much more rainfall, but when they happen, much more intense. They're called convective storms, and we may need to plan for that. In the winters, I think we're going to see it's going to get a lot wetter. But as you have very dry, sometimes very dry springs, you can dry the land out, so there's less moisture in the soil, and that almost sort of amplifies the warming. So I think we do need to take things like heat stress very seriously.
Winter 2014. People across the south resorted to paddle power to go from house to house. The need to plan and protect residents from these kind of events, and worse, is clear.
Over the last few years, we've become much more aware that it's not just happening to people in poor countries far away.
Councillor Dr. Pete Sudbury is the Cabinet Member for Climate Change at Oxfordshire County Council.
Suddenly you get people in Germany and in Holland drowning or being killed by their houses falling down in a flood. And at that point you think, none of us are proof against this. A lot of people are now waking up to this. It's here. We need to prepare for it, and then we need to work out how, and then we need to get the information out, and that's the job of all of us.
That report from our political reporter Claire Starr. In Oxfordshire, we've been talking about flooding here for years. It was one of the first major stories that I covered going back 7-8 years ago now, and flooding has meant that you're starting to take action over this. Do you remember the floods? And this was before my time, but my time here, but those that affected Botley and a number of other areas. It was 2007 in the summer, in July that year.
We've got quite a scene in front of us here. We've got a water pump desperately trying to get rid of some of the water, people doing self-fill sandbags, and all of the houses, the water is lapping at the side of them.
I've lived here all of my life and I've never ever seen anything like this before. We got out in the night about 4 o'clock and we just put our feet into water.
So you got out of your bed into the water?
Yes, it came up through in the night.
We've been up all night, we're underwater. There's no getting in and no getting out. We are really blocked off.
The water's kind of overflowing over the bridge and the water's actually coming through the houses now, and you've got water from one end of the house straight through to the other.
I've been talking to people who've lived in this road for 20 odd years and have never seen a drop of water come along it. We are now, we have a river running outside and through the house as well.
We all want to stay there. We love Earl Street, and no one, I don't think, wants to move, but obviously we can't go through this again because it's just too traumatic for everybody.
It was 2007. It was the winter floods of 2014 that I remember really clearly, when the roads, Botley Road and Abingdon Road, they were closed due to flooding. The train services, I remember, were stopped as well, and they had to bring in these high-volume pumps that people could get out of their front doors. After those floods in 2007, residents got together to form Low Carbon West Oxford, and Neville Scrivener is from the group. Good morning, Neville. I mean, it's 2007. It's a long time ago now. You must remember it like it was yesterday.
Good morning. Yes, I do. Listening to some of that again brings back the memories. It was very scary, although it was on the back of floods here over the winter from 2000 that blocked Botley Road at that point in time, and 2003 and 4. But never had we had a storm like it in the summer. And the storm had fallen on the Friday. On the Saturday, it was a lovely warm day. We'd had the local festival in Botley Park, West Oxford, and it was West Oxford on Sea was ironically the logo for it. And it was scary because you just didn't know what was going to happen. And when we were lucky in terms of we had another couple of breeze blocks to go before our floor would have gone under. But when you've got water in your back garden more than knee deep for 10 days, it gets very frightening.
Yeah, I understand. You went on to form Low Carbon West Oxford. Mm-hmm. I mean, what progress have you made in the last 14, 15 years?
I think I'd say we've made a lot of progress in terms of Low Carbon West Oxford is one of the groups that works with West Oxford Community Renewables. There was already a background of groups about sustainability and waste watching in the area that really came together. And both with the production of renewable energy through WOCOR and the hydro project, and some of the profits for that being fed back into the organisation, it means that we've been able to work with households to reduce their carbon footprint. We've been able to help people look at reduction in terms of transport, in terms of food, in terms of all sorts of other elements, encouraging people to cycle, encouraging people not to use cars for very short journeys, to use public transport where possible. But it's made a big difference. I was looking at some of our figures, and we've helped households save as many tonnes in carbon dioxide production in a year as we've produced, so in terms of the double cut. And that adds up to about the amount of carbon dioxide that a 3 to 4 bedroom house would use in a year for just over 130 houses, which is a lot.
It's a lot. Neville, just briefly, in a sentence or two, we're a bit tight for time, but what do you want to hear from COP26 today, from all these politicians meeting? What do you want them to say that would make you think that this has been a success?
I would like them to say that that they really are going to carry through the policies, that this isn't some sort of effective greenwashing of policies, that we're all going to do it in the future. We can't exploit the world in the future. We have to look after it for the future. So I hope they're actually going to stick with the things that they're saying they're going to do and not put things off. And I'd like the individual governments to be offering green grants and support for people to be able to make a difference to their houses.
Thank you very much, Neville Scrivener from Low Carbon West Oxford. If you want to hear more about the World Climate Conference in Glasgow, there's a special podcast called Make a Difference, a message from the world to COP26, which is on BBC Sounds. There is extensive coverage of COP26 right across the BBC. Some really interesting long reads on the website if you got a chance over a cuppa this morning. And we'll hear from scientists about predicting the weather locally for decades ahead. I mean, how do they do that? And do you trust them? Got a text here from Joe. West Oxford says, these scientists can't even predict the weather for the next day. I don't know how much I trust their prediction for future years. 81333, start your message with the word Oxford, and we'll come on to talk more about COP26 throughout this morning and the next few days as well. It's 7:27. Just one other